Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Nazarene, Israel. I'm your host, Norman Willis. And last week in Parasha Shemote, we saw that the powers that be of the day were tempted to kill off all the Israelite males and work them to death. Sound familiar? Well, when Yahweh sent Moshe, or Moses, to deliver the people, Paro, or Pharaoh, punished the people for asking permission to go and serve Yahweh. At the end of Parasha Shemot, the people cried out, and then Moshe asked Yahweh, and Yahweh said that now he would begin to deal with Paro with a strong hand, such that Paro himself would drive the children of Israel out of his land with a strong hand. And now, this week, in Shemot chapter 6 and verse 2, Elohim spoke to Moshe and said to him, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov as El Shaddai, meaning Elohim Almighty. But by my name Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them. So in the last Parasha Shemot, we talked about the importance of knowing someone's name. Because in Hebraic thought, a name is a specific sound, but it's also much more than just a specific sound. In Hebrew, the word name is Strong's Hebrew Concordance H or OT 8034. It's pronounced Shem or perhaps Shame, and it's a primitive word referring to an appellation or a name, but basically referring to one's honor, one's authority, and one's character. A name refers to one's fame or to one's renown among the world. And as we saw in the last parasha, when the children of Israel were in Egypt, they didn't even know Yahweh's name. So how did they know Yahweh's character? Well, brothers, do we know Yahweh's character? And it's not an idle question, because if we're going to be his son's bride and we're going to go back to his house, and he's going to be the king and the head of our house, well, have we gotten to know him? Do we know what he wants? Do we know the things he likes and doesn't like? Are we doing the things now that he likes and not doing the things that he doesn't like? Well, here at the start of the Exodus from Egypt, Yahweh is telling Israel his name. And that's because, as we show in our studies on the ancient Hebrew wedding model, Yahweh's getting ready to take Israel as a bride for his son Yeshua, because that's how they did things back in earlier times. In ancient times, they had an ancient Hebrew wedding model. And in the ancient Hebrew wedding model, two families would agree on a match. And the match is called a shidduch, and the process is called shidduchin. So when the shidduch, or the match, is made, the two families celebrate with a celebratory meal, which, as we'll see between Elohim and Israel, that celebratory meal is the Pesach, or the Passover. We talk about that more in our studies on the ancient Hebrew wedding model. Well, if you're going to get married and you're going to leave spiritual Egypt and you're going to go back and live in your husband's father's house, then you might as well know your groom's father's name, right? Well, and consider, if the groom's father just so happens to be the king of the universe and he sets the rules, then we might as well get to know his name and what he likes, right? We ought to develop the habits of doing those things that he likes so that the son will want to take us as his bride back to his father's house. So if we realize that Yahweh just doesn't give gifts gratuitously, he gives them for a purpose and for a reason. So because of that, what an exciting thing it is to get to know his name, because he doesn't just reveal his name to anyone. So isn't that an encouraging sign that he wants us to learn his name, and he wants us to learn all about his reputation? He wants us to learn about his character. So he wants us to get to know the things that he likes and doesn't like. We're going to need this information to get chosen as his bride, because becoming part of Yeshua's kingdom is anything but easy, and it's anything but automatic. You can't keep Torah by accident. It's definitely an effort. We have to make that effort constantly, or else we're disconnected. So, but if we talk about Yahweh's name, there are many times he's called Yahweh of hosts, or Yahweh of armies is another translation. And he's called Yahweh of hosts, or Yahweh of armies, in verse 26. Now, some people might think this is a little over the top, but we've been talking about what happens when we learn Yahweh's name, says so many of us are. And in Hebrew, the concept of a name is Strong's Hebrew or Old Testament 8034, Shem or Shame. And it's a primitive word meaning appellation or name, but it refers to one's honor, one's authority, and one's character. It refers to one's fame. It refers to one's name. It refers to one's renown and what people think about you. And we know that Yahweh takes his name very, very seriously. So, but really, someone's name refers to one's character. Well, all names have layers of meaning in Hebrew. So, what does it say about Yahweh and his character that he takes the name Yahweh of hosts or Yahweh of armies? What should we know if that's part of his name? If we love him and want to know who he is, and because we want to please him by helping him build his son's kingdom. Well, living under democracy, most of us imagine a leader of the nation being a president or a prime minister. And that's also the commander in chief of the armed forces. Now, sometimes your president or your prime minister is a military man, but most times not. In a democracy, the commander in chief is normally a businessman or a lawyer or someone from the controlling elites, because that's what it takes to mobilize the support that it takes to win an election. So, really, a president or a prime minister in democracy, mostly he's a successful fundraiser, is what he is. Now, at times, he can also be a military man. But the thing is, with a king in Scripture, he's always a military man, much like King David was a military man, or perhaps like Joshua was also a military man. But in Scripture, being a military man is part of a king's character. It has to be, because that's who the king is. He's a military leader. He also controls the money. But force of arms and money, that's the job of the kingship. So, as we show in the Torah government study, Yahweh is a great king. And Yeshayahu, or Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6, tells us that Yahweh sent his son, Yeshua, as the Prince of Peace. Well, Prince of Peace, that sounds nice, doesn't it? But if we look that word up in Strong's Hebrew or Old Testament Concordance, it's H or OT 8269. And what it means is a field marshal. So if we think about it, Yeshua is the field marshal of peace. And what that means is he's going to establish his peace as the result of a highly successful spiritual military campaign that he wants us to work for him in his absence. And what that means is he wants a bride who wants eagerly to establish for him a literal spiritual military kingdom. And as we show in Torah government, that means the way he plans to establish his peace is for his people to establish his literal spiritual kingdom according to all the things he commands in the Great Commission and in the fivefold ministry order of Ephesians chapter 4. Well, it's a different kind of a picture. But as we show in the Torah government study, the renewed covenant really is just the next phase of a very long, generations long process to establish a literal unified kingdom for Yeshua. It's based on love and not control. But it is a great big spiritual military campaign because Yeshua is the field marshal of peace. He's going to establish his peace by successfully winning the campaign. So if someone doesn't believe that, they don't think Yeshua's bride wears combat boots. Well, she does. So she's, if your husband's going to be a great military leader, what kind of a queen does he want? So we need to be all things for him in his service. Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 24, the apostle Shaul, or Paul, tells us that when the end comes, Yeshua will deliver the kingdom we have built for him in his absence, as his body, as his hands and his feet, Yeshua will deliver the kingdom to Elohim the Father when he puts an end to all earthly, meaning Egyptian and Babylonian authority and power and rule. And that's because Yeshua is going to reign until he's put all of his Father's enemies under his feet. And then verse 28 tells us that when all things are made subject to Yeshua, then Yeshua himself will also be subject to Yahweh his Father, his king and commander, so that Elohim may be all in all. But again, if we know these things, then what kind of people should we be? Meaning, what kind of a bride is he looking for? Lots of people imagine that the life of a queen is full of leisure and feasting and dining and wearing gold and jewelry and fine clothing and vacations and these kinds of things that they practice in the Babylonian kingdom. But the reality is that, at least to do things the right way, it takes hard work to be a queen. You have to be aware of the things that are going on in the kingdom. You can't be blind to any plots that are being hatched. It's hard work. So a lot of coordination. There's always some kind of rebellion afoot. So if a queen loves her husband and she wants him to remain king, then why wouldn't she do her very best to help him? Because he's under challenges and pressures from all sides. He needs her to help him so that he can run the kingdom the right way. If he doesn't have her help and support, it's going to be much harder for him to do his job. So that's why he's looking for a bride that wants eagerly to serve him. Now, in Shemote chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, Yahweh tells Moshe that he's going to do basically three things. First, he's going to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. Second, he says he's going to do so by great judgments, which show his power and his name. And third, he's going to do it in such a way that the Egyptians shall know that he is Yahweh Elohim, meaning the real Elohim. But they're going to know who he is, and they're going to know what he wants. Well, and we see a mixed multitude came up out of Egypt with Israel because of the power of Yahweh's name. So Yahweh's name is very important to him because that's how people judge him. That's his reputation. Well, the way that Yahweh did that was effectively to execute judgment on Egypt's gods. So if we take a look at the 10 plagues, they correspond to 10 of the gods that the Egyptians worshipped. For example, the Egyptians worshipped the Nile River as a god. So the Nile River was turned to blood in judgment on that god, and so on with the other 9. But the thing about the number of judgments being 10 is that 10 indicates completion. It indicates a complete unit. So just like the 10 commandments would later come to symbolize a perfect set of ethics and principles, Yahweh's 10 judgments upon Egypt also symbolize a perfect set of 10 judgments upon Egypt's gods. And we're going to see in Parasha Yitro, in Exodus chapter 20, that the very first commandment, before anything else, is to realize that Yahweh is our Elohim, that it's Yahweh and not anyone else. He is our mighty one. He is our strength. He is our shield. He is our strong tower. And that he is the one, Yahweh, who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, not the Lord, not Baal. So Yahweh is the one to whom we owe all allegiance. So not only do we need to know who Yahweh is and what he expects, but we're also not supposed to have any other false Elohim or any other false gods before him. And he takes that very seriously because he wants all of our attention. He wants all of our allegiance. He wants all of our service. And as we show in the Torah calendar study, service is effectively anything we pay attention to. So Yahweh wants us paying attention to him. That's it. So, and he wants us to place building his son's kingdom as our tip-top number one priority. He wants it to be our hobby. He wants it to be something that we're eager to do. So were we ready for this? We knew we wanted to be the bride, but did we realize that our husband is a military conqueror like King David, and that his bride wears combat boots because she has to help him in this spiritual military campaign. We're not only his bride, we're also his body. We're his hands and his feet. He is our head in the heavens, directing our actions, and we are the ones walking these things out according to his word. That's our job. And we have to come together in order to do that. Well, as we see in the study on Revelation in the end times, basically the bride is going to wear camouflage to the wedding, which is Armageddon. So, and she also has to learn to endure hardship as a good soldier of Yeshua Messiah. But when you consider that this is the end times, that isn't a small thing. But it is a small thing in exchange for the privilege of becoming the bride of the King of the universe. Now, for the Haftarah prophetic portion, the rabbis, the Pharisees, chose Yehezkel, or Ezekiel, chapter 28 and verse 25, running through Yehezkel, chapter 29 and verse 21. Now, in chapter 28 and verse 25, Yahweh Elohim tells us that when he gathers the house of Israel, or the Ephraimites, that's us, from among the peoples among whom we are scattered, he will manifest his set-apartness, or his holiness, in us. And this is something he's going to do right in the sight of all the nations. And that's when we're going to get to go home and dwell in his land again. However, in the meantime, he gave the land to his servant Jacob, or Yaakov, in this case meaning Judah of the southern kingdom. So Yahweh gave the land of Israel to the southern house of Judah, or the Jews, while Ephraim's job was to go into all the nations looking for the lost Israelites and bringing them back to the covenant by faith and belief in Yeshua. Well, what that means is, as we saw last week, and as we're going to see again and again, there's still going to be a remnant of Judah in the land after Armageddon. And they're already going to have their own government when we come home. And we are going to end up merging into that government. And I know there's a lot of Ephraimites that don't like that, but it doesn't really matter. So Yahweh's word is going to walk out just exactly as it's written, whether we like it or not. And actually, it's one of the very few rabbinic doctrines I actually agree with, is that when the lost 10 tribes come home, they will effectively have to convert to Judaism. And a lot of Ephraimites are just up in arms over that comment. We're not Jews, we are Ephraimites. But in certain passages, the scriptures say that we must merge into Judah. Now, so we have to convert to Judaism. Now, the only happy news is it doesn't say, scripture doesn't say what kind of Judaism. So that's why when I was talking with the Orthodox Sanhedrin back in 2017, back when they thought I was going to be their Mashiach ben Yosef character, that's a whole separate saga, I offered that we would be happy to convert Christians to Nazarene Judaism or Nazarene Israel. It's because we're already doing that. That's something we want to do. Well, you can guess what they thought of that idea. So, that whole Mashiach ben Yosef thing was a very interesting episode, sort of a dubious honor to be chosen for that position. But I had the secretary of the Sanhedrin, of the Orthodox Sanhedrin, of the council, telling me that it was right for them to kill Yeshua. And the implication was that anyone else who believed in Yeshua as the Messiah, meaning me, should also meet the same fate. And then I had the Nasi of the Sanhedrin bellowing at me over the phone, no Christian can be a Jew. So, and then as a result of that, I realized, I had been spent more than 10 years in the two-house movement, the Messianic movement, the Ephraimite movement, trying to find a way that we could go back home to the land of Israel early. And as a result of that episode, I realized that what I had been told before was correct, that I had an Orthodox rabbi tell me that he was strangely sympathetic to our cause. I'm not sure why, but he told me there will never be a time when the rabbis will not need to oppose you. And I thought about that. It's like I realized at that point in time, that's correct. There will never be a time when they're not going to have to oppose us until Armageddon. Everything will change at Armageddon. We'll talk about that in a minute. And when you try to explain to them that we're not Christians, we're their long lost brothers in Ephraim, and that we don't want to be Jews because we're Ephraimites, you can guess how that goes as well. So more bellowing. Now, our Pharisee rabbinical brothers may have their opinions, but no matter what they think, verse 26, Yahweh tells us it doesn't matter what Orthodox Judah says. In that day, we from Ephraim shall dwell securely in the land of Israel again. We shall again build houses and again plant vineyards. And even though Yahweh will execute judgments upon all our neighbors who've treated us with contempt, just like he did in days of old, we who serve and fear him shall dwell securely in the land of Israel, just like our forefathers dwelt securely in the land of Goshen. But while this passage is very reassuring, and while it's good information, and while there's some very interesting parallels, it doesn't really give us anything we can use to help build Yeshua's kingdom, because it doesn't really show us his direction. So that's why instead we've chosen Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 66 for this week's Haftarah prophetic portion. Because in Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 66, we're going to see special blessings for those of us who are already trying to keep the Torah through obedience to Yeshua's Spirit. Now, we are talking about the times of the end, so there are some very difficult, some very hard things here. But if we look closely, we're going to see there's also some very important things that not only tell us what's coming, but also can help us know how to prepare. For example, in Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 1, just from the context and our knowledge of the book of Revelation, we can tell that Yahweh is talking about the upcoming third temple. Now, the upcoming third temple, or the rabbinic temple, that's not Ezekiel's temple, or what's called the millennial temple in Ezekiel's chapters 40 through 46. Rather, Yahweh's talking about the coming anti-Yeshua temple, or the anti-Messiah's temple, that the Sabbatean Frankist rabbis are getting ready to build after this next war, basically by co-opting the governments of the world through owning their money supplies and things of that nature. Well, my interpretation, my understanding is that what Yahweh is really saying here is, Judah, it's really great that you guys are building me a temple. But the problem is you've got this legalistic thing going on, and you're getting the focus all wrong. Now, your legalistic priorities are very backwards. And if you don't start listening, if you don't start doing what I tell you to do, you're going to have some great big aching problems coming up. You need to start paying attention now. He says, now, first, let's get some perspective on the issues here. In the first place, you want to build me a temple. When I made you? Okay, but let's get to the main issue here. You want to build me a temple, right? Okay, but you want to build it not by power, not by might, but by my spirit? Is that how you want to build it? Or perhaps are you, my creation, wanting to build me this temple by the power and strength of your own right hand, and the power and strength of your Masonic Lodge and luminous control grid networks? How are we building this temple to set me apart? Now, let me ask you something. How does it glorify me if you build me a temple by your own power and strength, not by my spirit? And you've done all sorts of evil all over the world to gain control of the money supplies and to gain control of your illuminist and Masonic control grids. How does that glorify me? That doesn't glorify me. That glorifies you. Well, Judah, if I had to choose between having a corrupt Sabbatean Frankist temple built with corrupt money, or having a people who are poor and of contrite spirit, who walk humbly with me and who tremble at my word, meaning they're actually trying to do my word and not the rules they made up for themselves in the Talmud, I'm going to have to choose the humble approach, and I'm going to be willing to repopulate the land over it. Now listen, I don't like this temple because you shed lots of blood getting your Masonic Lodge and Illuminati control grid set up. And you're not listening to my spirit because I didn't tell you to do that. And you made up your own version of the Torah, and you don't allow my son to enter in. You think I like that? Listen, if you're asking how I see things, I'm saying whoever kills a bull in this kind of a polluted temple that honors human power and strength and corruption, rather than submission to my son, rather than submission to my spirit, that's like he killed someone. That's like he slays a man. And he who sacrifices a lamb in that kind of a temple, it's as if he breaks a dog's neck. Now, he who offers a grain offering in that kind of a temple, it's as if he's offered swine's blood. Because what are you honoring? Even if you burn incense in that kind of a polluted, corrupted temple that they're getting ready to set up right now, he says, that doesn't honor me because that's not what I said to do. So if you even offer so much as incense in a corrupted temple like that, it's as if you're blessing an idol because you're not blessing me by looking for my son. That's for sure. So what are you placing in place of my son? What are you truly serving? Because you're not serving me. You're not doing what I told you to do. You've got your own Torah going on. Now, Judah, I love you. I love you very much, but I keep trying to tell you, you've chosen your own ways. For some reason, your soul seems to delight in these abominations. You make up your own version of my Torah, you add and subtract whatever you want, and then you pretend it still comes from me, because you pretend that I gave you the authority to edit my Torah, my wedding contract with you. Have you forgotten that you have to fulfill my commandments, my way, in order to be in my favor? Without adding and subtracting anything, and without blocking out my son. Look, I told you in verse 4, when I called, you didn't answer. And when I spoke, you didn't hear me talking to you. Now, I love you, and I'm talking with you all the time. I'm trying to get your attention in love, with patience like a gentle stream. But still, you just take advantage. You don't listen. Still, you did what you knew I consider to be evil, and you chose that in which I said I do not delight. I love you so much, son, but what am I supposed to do? I can't let you inflict that kind of treatment on the rest of the world and do it in my name. That's not of me. That's of the adversary. And then in verse 5, Yahweh switches things up. Now he's addressing those of us who tremble at his word. We sincerely hope that's us. He says, hear the word of Yahweh, those of us who tremble at his word, because our brethren in Zionist rabbinic one house Judah who hated us, now that includes not only the Orthodox, but also the Zionist Messianic rabbinic Jews, because they also reject Ephraim. They're one house believers. Now, Yahweh says he's going to be ashamed because he's doing what is not my will. And then in verse 6, Yahweh refers to Zionist Judah as his enemies. And he says that he fully repays his enemies. So if anyone is with Zionist one house Judah, and he loves the Spirit, and he loves the truth, and he loves Yahweh's word, this might be a real good time to switch teams, because there's going to be a hard whacking dead ahead. And in this passage, we tie this to the tribulation and Armageddon. It isn't going to go too well for those who are in the land of Israel. You can read about that in the study on Revelation and the end times. But Yahweh's saying, in Judah, we love you, but you need to pay attention now before Yahweh has to whack you and get your attention the hard way. Well, then in verse 7, there's what's called a remez, or a hint, whom or what Yahweh's talking about, because he talks about how the nation of Judah was reborn in one day, meaning May the 14th, 1948, with the recognition of the state of Israel. And Yahweh's basically telling us that he does love Judah. He loves Judah so much, and that's why he's going to put the masses of Judah through this horrible refinement of the sons of Levi, because they haven't chosen his ways. So because of this, he has to refine them as silver and gold are refined in the fire. So if you think about that, it's not a pleasant process. First, silver and gold is mined out of the earth. Then it's crushed. Then it's sluiced. Then it's centrifuged. Then it's melted. It takes a lot of heat. It's literally melted. They scrape the impurities off. And they melt it again. They scrape the impurities off again. If you think about that, not a very pleasant process. That's what's going to be going on in the land of Israel. But after that, Yahweh wants to bless them. They have to be purified first, but then he wants to bless them. And in verse 12 begins the blessing. So verse 12 tells us that after the tribulation, after Yeshua has revealed himself to the whole world at Armageddon, and every knee bows, Judah will also repent. And then Yahweh is going to be able to extend peace to Judah like a river, and the glory of the Gentile Ephraimites coming home like a flowing stream. And in that day, Yahweh will comfort brother Judah. But that's going to be a hard thing for him. And everything's going to change in those days because, as we've seen in the Revelation study, Babylon will have fallen and Yeshua's empire is going to be set up for 1,000 years. So, and all this, what we're discussing here, corresponds to the time frame in which Ephraim comes home and merges into the remnant of Judah who has already come to believe after Armageddon. And in Revelation, the end times, we do place this at the Armageddon time frame because that's when Yeshua will appear in the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and every knee shall bow. Now, we also tie this to Zechariah chapter 12 and verse 10, which tells us that somewhere in the tribulation and Armageddon time frame, we place it at Armageddon, it says that Yeshua will appear in the clouds, and brother Judah will look upon Yeshua, whom he has pierced, and that they will realize who he is and what they did, and that all the destruction that they've just gone through was just repayment for their sins as a house, for what the Sabbatean Frankists have done. And then they'll mourn for him as one mourns for the loss of a firstborn. And it's going to be the greatest mourning ever when they realize what they've done, even though they did it with the best of intentions, but they weren't stopping and letting Yeshua's Spirit lead. They tried to build the kingdom in their own power and strength with their own thoughts instead of just opening their hearts to Yeshua and letting Yeshua's Spirit lead. That's going to be a terrible thing. But that's what happens when you don't submit completely to the Spirit and let the Spirit be the one to lead you day by day. And that's not even renewed covenant material. Submitting to the voice of the Spirit is clearly spoken of in Mishlei or Proverbs chapter 8. And brother Judah is accountable for everything in the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, even without faith in Yeshua. He still has that contained in Mishlei or Proverbs chapter 8. That's where the Spirit, or the Ruach, tells us that if we don't listen to her, she's going to laugh when our calamity comes. There won't be any sympathy because we didn't listen when she tried to call us. In Proverbs 8 is clear. She's always calling everyone who claims to believe on Yahweh. That's a critical thing. It's something we need to do. So, brother Judah is responsible for Proverbs 8 since the reign of King Solomon. So there's no excuse for them not to know this. And in verse 19, there's something that sounds amazingly good, but which for some reason we don't truly understand, isn't popular with some Ephraimites. It must be because they don't understand how Yahweh provides. And that's that when we return home back to the land of Israel, we're basically going to merge into what is left of the southern kingdom of Judah. And that means that when we come home, Judah is going to have his own government that already believes in Yeshua. So what that means is their government will change from what it is now, because Judah will have just realized who Yeshua is at Armageddon. He will appear in the clouds, and every eye shall see him, and every knee shall bow. But what we don't know is if they convert straight away to Nazarene Israel, or if they make a pit stop at one house, rabbinic messianic Judaism, or how exactly Yahweh is going to work that out. But they'll be looking for answers, I'm sure. And all we truly know about that time is there's going to be a great reorganization in that day. We talk about that in more detail in Revelation and the end times. So in context, we're talking about Ephraim coming home. So in that context, let's also notice that in verse 19, Yahweh says that his glory will be declared among the Gentiles. And then, speaking to brother Judah, Yahweh says that when the ingathering takes place, they, meaning the Gentile nations of, or the current spiritual Egypt, they shall bring all of Judah's brethren, meaning Ephraim, for an offering to Yahweh out of all nations. They're going to bring the first and the finest of the nations. That's us. So he's going to bring Ephraim, the nations shall bring Ephraim for an offering to Yahweh out of all nations, on trains, planes, automobiles, horses and chariots, and in litters, and on mules, and on camels, to his set apart mountain Jerusalem. Maybe some motorcycles in there. He says, as the children of Israel, meaning the Ephraimites, bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yahweh. So Ephraim will come home in cleansed vessels, meaning cleansed because they keep the original first century Nazarene Jewish or Nazarene Israelite faith that was once for all the disciple believers delivered to the saints. And then he says, and I will also take some of them for priests and Levites, says Yahweh. And we talk about this a lot more in other places, but that's when the Melchizedekian and the purified and refined Levitical orders will be merged. And that's also when Ezekiel's temple, or what's called the millennial temple, will be built, Ezekiel chapters 40 through 46. And the renewed temple, the renewed cleansed temple, will be staffed by a renewed Levitical order, where the sons of Levi have been purified and refined by fire and now believe in Yeshua. And those from the Melchizedekian order, that's us, shall be joined and merged with them. So what the end result will be is that those with Yeshua's heart will be serving in Ezekiel's temple, or the millennial temple that Yahweh himself prophesied. And in that day, the living temple will serve inside of Yahweh's renewed physical temple. And if you want more details, we have a whole chapter on the ingathering in the millennium in Revelation in the End Times, or Revelation Simplified on the YouTube channel. And now for the Brit Hadashah, or the Renewed Covenant portion, the traditional Messianic Jewish reading, if we can call it that, is Luke, or Luca chapter 11, verses 14 through 22. And this is one of the synoptic passages where they accuse Yeshua of casting out demons by Beelzebul, or Baal Zebuvim, the prince of demons. And we don't really know why the Messianic Jewish rabbis chose this passage, but perhaps it has something to do with the fact that even though Yahweh gave Moshe and Aharon legitimate miracles, Paro didn't take those miracles seriously, because his magicians and sorcerers could also conjure up the same kinds of damage and plagues. So as an aside, you kind of have to wonder about Paro's mental state. The magicians and sorcerers, they couldn't cure the plagues, and they couldn't even stop them from happening. But since Paro's magicians and sorcerers could also basically ruin the land, Paro figured there was no need to take Yahweh's messengers seriously. Well, Just like Paro and his magicians didn't want to take Moshe and Aharon seriously, the Egyptian Babylonian rabbis also seem to have felt that there was no need to take Yeshua seriously, even though he was also doing genuine miracles. So they had to find some way to degrade his miracles in the people's eyes. So, however, the synoptic accounts are called synoptic accounts because they all run parallel. They're all very similar. So, because they run parallel, we want to use the version in Matthew chapter 12 for our readings because there are some special things that Matthew chapter 12 brings out we would like to point out, and they're easier to spot in Matthew chapter 12. So, in Matthew chapter 12 and verse 24, the Pharisees accused Yeshua of casting out demons by Beelzebub or Baal Zebuvim. And in response, Yeshua tells us something that every disorganized messianic who refuses organization, who doesn't want to organize, should sit down and think about long and hard, as in counting the cost, which is that every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And brothers, isn't that effectively the case with the kingdom of Ephraim today? So Yeshua tells us that a city or a house divided against itself will not stand. Isn't the house of Ephraim divided right now? And isn't he divided because he's not unifying behind the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints? And won't he always continue to be divided until he returns to the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints? How many problems can we short circuit just by keeping Yeshua's faith, the one that he delivered? And there's plenty more we could talk about in this chapter, but it's going to have to wait for another time. But what we need to realize right now in Parasha Va'era is that when Israel was called out of Egypt, in a few parashot, we're going to see that just as soon as they're freed, Yahweh begins to organize them so that they could continue to remain unified and to remain together as a nation. Because once you grow beyond a single common ancestor, now you need a governmental structure or you can't hold the nation together. And Yahweh tells us how he wants us to do that. And we'll also see Yeshua tells us how he wants us to do that when we're in the dispersion under the Melchizedekian order. But one of the things we're going to see here in the chapters coming up is that Israel had to believe all the same way. Because in Scripture, a nation is defined as a group of disciples or a group of people who all worship the same way together. So, for example, the Israelite sect of the Nazarenes is a nation, biblically speaking, because it's a group of disciples who all seek to worship together the same way. Now, anything less than that, and you don't have a nation, really, biblically speaking. Because the requirement isn't to live like voters under a democracy with rights and privileges guaranteed by law and elections that can get stolen and this kind of thing. Rather, the requirement is to live like a righteous bunch of citizens and subjects in a righteous kingdom who all pull together for their king because they love him with all of their heart, with all of their soul, and with all of their strength. Because if they don't do that, if they don't rally and unite and pull together behind their king, the kingdom becomes divided and eventually it falls. That's what's happened to Ephraim already. So that's not what we want. We don't want the Messiah's kingdom to fall. I don't. Do you? But we have to use wisdom in this because the Sabbatean Frankists sure do. So if we as a nation of Ephraim can wake up to the reality, the Sabbatean Frankists want us all either to convert to Orthodox Judaism or they want us out of the way. And they've been working on plans for that for many centuries now, at least since the Enlightenment, if not long before. It was kind of a shock to me when I realized during the whole Mashiach ben Yosef incident that they know who we are. So when I was in the two-house movement, that was the big goal, was to get Judah, to get brother Judah to recognize we're their brother Ephraim. And when I went in 2017, I realized They already know who we are. They've been tracking us since the days we left Israel and went to Assyria. They know who we are. They've been tracking us a long time. And the reason Brother Judah is succeeding, now take a look, he's not operating the way Yahweh wants him to operate. But the reason they've gotten this far is because they're disciplined and because they're organized. So they have a common mission and they have a common purpose, which they want to accomplish together. Now, it's a wrong mission and a wrong purpose. It's the right concept. It's just the wrong execution, but it's the right concept. And when you look at what they have been able to accomplish because they're organized, you realize if you organize, you can accomplish many more things for Yeshua than we can all do alone. So the way we can succeed is to organize the way Yeshua tells us to organize, which, as we show in many other places, and we'll see again, is the fivefold ministry of Ephesians 4, built on a single foundation of apostles and prophets, which is the Beit Din structure. And that's in Ephesians chapter 2. We're going to talk a lot more about that as this series continues. But as we prepare to leave spiritual Egypt today and go back home, us or the next generation of our children, going back home to the land of Israel in fulfillment of the prophecies. So as we get ready to leave spiritual Egypt, and as we get ready to leave the Babylonian world system, let's realize and remember that Yahweh's calling his people to organize so they can do many more things for his sons. They can accomplish more for him. And when we stop to consider that his son asks us to do it in Ephesians 2 and 4, how can we say no? Is our money and our freedom more important to us than serving Yeshua? Is our time more important than serving Yeshua? Well, can we imagine how much better we can serve and glorify Yeshua together, working as a team? Have we ever thought about the things we could do together for him as a unified body if we followed his instructions and organized as he says, and the blessings we'd receive? Well, Brother Judah's numbers are small, but look at the vast influence Judah has because he's organized, because he works together basically as a military operation. So if we organize according to Yeshua's instructions, won't our influence greatly expand worldwide? Scripture says we're going to rule and reign over the nations with his rod of iron. But he wants us to organize according to his instructions first. That's how he can bless us. Because Yeshua tells us that when we're in him spiritually like that, when we abide in him and him in the Father and the Father in him and him in us and us in him, that's the kind of a connection he wants. That's what he wants us to do. And if we will do that, and if we will listen for the voice of the Spirit and ask him to show us, he will show us how we can all submit first to the Spirit and then submit one to another in the Spirit. And brothers and sisters, that is the living temple that we're supposed to form for him. That is the tabernacle of David, which is being restored. So please join us again next week for Parasha Bo, or Torah portion Come, which is Shemote, or Exodus chapter 10, starting in verse 1 through chapter 13 and verse 16, with a Haftarah reading of Yirmiyahu, or Jeremiah, chapter 46, traditionally 13 through 28, but we're going to sign all of chapter 46 and also all of Mark chapter 3. And to answer a common question, you can find the Nazarene Israel Parashah schedule on the Nazarene Israel website under the Resources tab. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you again next week for Parasha Bo. Shabbat Shalom. Yahweh be with you.